Typhoon Noru makes landfall in Vietnam.
Powerful winds and heavy rain poured in Da Nang as Typhoon Noru barrels into the country's central coast. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines. Peso hits 59 peso level against the dollar in midday trading and settled for 58 pesos and 98 centavos at the closing. Senate approves BICAM report on the proposed deferment of barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections on last Monday of October 2023. Hurricane Ian threatens Florida as U.S. President Joe Biden worries the calamity would be life-threatening and devastating. 17 die as fire hits a restaurant in northern China. And annexation votes favoring return to Russia claims victory in 4 regions of Ukraine. The Philippine currency touched the 59 peso level against the US dollar during an early trading Wednesday. Data from the Bankers Association of the Philippines showed the peso hitting its weakest against the greenback at 59 pesos around 10:11 a.m. The peso's weakness mirrors the movement in other currency markets in the region amidst a rallying US dollar powered by the US Federal Reserve's hike to tame high inflation. Financial analysts, however, expected the peso to slightly recover from remittances and exports during the holiday. The local currency opened Wednesday's trading at 58 pesos and 98 centavos and closed at the same rate.
A lawmaker warns that the Philippine peso may slump by up to 65 pesos against the US dollar. Let's find out why in this report of Madeline Villar Morotillo.
The Philippine currency has experienced its weakest in intraday trading today, touching the 59 peso level against the US dollar. Albay Congressman Joey Salceda, who is also a known economist, warns the peso may depreciate up to 65 pesos against the US dollar.
Sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, mabibilang mo ang mga 10 kung saan may ganito kalaki na epekto o pangyayari at kung ano nangyari sa piso. So, on the average, 65.
But this can be reversed depending on the moves by the United States to avert the impact of high inflation.
Hanggang matapos ang US na may balik nilang inflation from 14 to 2%. Ay, nasa 14 sila ngayon eh. Eh, ang kanilang policy rule 2, policy rule natin 4, 2 to 4. Yung interest rate dito sa atin, enough na yan for 2 to 4. Eh, sa US, hindi.
Salceda believes the current Marcos administration can remedy the situation to prevent further suffering of ordinary Filipinos.
Para tayong dinaanan lang ng bagyo. So parang sana meron tayong Sierra Madre. May 62% si Bongbong. Magaling ang kanyang kabinete. Pagalawin niya. Magkaroon na economic transportation na maibaba ang presyo ng kuryente. Mapabilis ang approval ng mga permit ng mga local government unit. Ayusin ang agrikultura para mas mura ang pagkain. Tigilan ang smuggling.
The lawmaker added the significant role that the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP played to slow the peso depreciation.
The House of Representatives has approved in the second and third reading the 5.268 trillion peso proposed national budget for 2023. House Speaker Martin Romualdez said the House voted 289 against 3 in a marathon session held Wednesday by congressmen. The lawmakers moved in favor for the passage of House Bill number 448, or the General Appropriations Bill, following President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s certification of the proposal as urgent. Romualdez lauded his colleagues for their valuable contributions in the swift passage of GAB and in ensuring that every centavo is spent wisely to implement the programs of the Marcos administration aimed at revitalizing the country's economy amid the lingering ill effects of the coronavirus pandemic. He said the House-approved budget for 2023 remains consistent with the 8-point socio-economic agenda of the Marcos administration to achieve sustainable growth. With the approval of GAB on third and final reading on Wednesday, the House met its self-imposed deadline to terminate the deliberations on the proposed 2023 budget prior to the adjournment of session from October 1 until November 6, 2022.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. led the grand opening of the state-of-the-art terminal of the Clark International Airport in Pampanga. In his message, the president said the new terminal is a strong signal that the Philippines is ready and open for new investments. Celine Dorado has the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. wants to maximize the use of regional airports in the country. The president said this in his speech during the grand opening of the new terminal facility of the Clark International Airport in Mabalacat, Pampanga.
Nating naaayos ang airport sa Maynila habang hindi pa naitatayo at nag-operate yung airport sa Bulacan, hindi pa nag-airport yung airport sa Sangli. Ito yung mga proposal ngayon ay kailangan natin buksan ang mga airport sa regional. Huwag nating pinipilit lahat kailangang dumaan na Maynila. So, direct na sa Bohol, direct sa Cebu, marami na talagang direct. Direct sa CDO, direct sa Davao na meron na rin. Pero ganun, para hindi na kailangan dumaan ng Maynila. Kaya itong ganitong klaseng project is exactly on point when it comes to the plans that we have.
The chief executive recognized the new terminal as an example of government and private sector partnership. President Marcos also added that the new airport facility would give a strong message that the Philippines is open for investments from other nations.
Again, the simple message that underlay all that we did was that the Philippines is here. We are a good place to invest. We are probably the most vibrant economy that is in Southeast Asia, and we understand the requirements and the needs of our potential investors, and we will we will do everything so that partnership becomes to the advantage of both the private sector, the public sector, to the people. And this facility is essentially a very strong signal that yes, indeed, we are open for business.
President Marcos also gives credit to the government agencies and the local government of Pampanga for the project.
Hindi kami ang gumawa nito, pero kinikilala namin na napakatama itong ginawa nito at napakalaking bagay at napakalaking tulong para sa pag-ahon ng ating ekonomiya.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The grand opening of the terminal was also witnessed by Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista, Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco, First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and other government officials. Celine Dorado reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Senate has approved the bicameral conference committee report postponing the December 23 barangay and sangguniang kabataan elections to the final Monday of October 2023. Senator J.V. Ejercito, chairman of the Senate Committee on Local Government, reported the reconciled version of the plenary hearing Wednesday. Ejercito said after much deliberation, the BICAM considered the following in coming up with its decision to move the election in October next year. There is a precedence of holding the synchronized barangay and SK elections in October. The date usually falls on the school break of youth voters and will enable them to participate in choosing their leaders in the community. It will be more cost-effective with reference to the position paper and computation of the Commission on Elections, which was submitted to the Committee on Electoral Reforms. The final version of the bill also provides that the term of office of the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan officials elected under the proposed measure shall commence at noon of November 30, 2023, following their election. The lawmaker added that the postponement of the BSKE would give ample time to Congress to revisit the laws and introduce amendments to strengthen the roles and mandate of barangay and SK officials.
SIM card registration will soon be mandatory following its passage at the Bicameral Conference Committee. The BICAM, however, rejects provisions seeking the registration of social media accounts of an individual. Man Corvera has the details.
The Bicameral Conference Committee has approved Senate Bill number 1310 and House Bill number 14, or the mandatory registration of SIM cards. Both chambers convened the BICAM last night to thrash out conflicting provisions of the proposals following the Senate's approval on the third and final reading of the bill. The approved version did not include the registration of social media account, as this would violate an individual's right. Under the proposal, Senator Grace Po, chairperson of the Senate Committee on Public Services, said individuals involved in text scam will not only be blocked but would be prosecuted under the law. Criminal and terrorist groups who uses prepaid SIM cards to violate others or to sow violence would also be charged and arrested.
Finally, meron na tayong magagawa aside from just ignoring, deleting, or blocking the numbers with fraudulent or spam messages. We now have in our hands the means to unmask criminals who have been hiding for so long under the protection of anonymity and to bring them to justice. Meron na pong pwedeng gawin para makulong sila o magbayad ng malaking multa.
For his part, Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri said they approved the proposal following various complaints from scam victims. He said the measure would prevent the unscrupulous individuals from victimizing the people with billions of pesos through text messages. The proposed bill will be submitted to Malacanang for President's signature. Lawmakers are hopeful that President would enact the law and would not receive the same fate as the previous SIM card registration bill vetoed by President Rodrigo Duterte. Mayan Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The International Criminal Court, or ICC, has not ruled on the request of the government against its probe on the war on drugs of the government. On the other hand, Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla insists that the ICC has no jurisdiction to investigate the Philippines. Moira Encina reports.
The International Criminal Court has no ruling yet on the request of the Philippine government against its probe on the war on drugs by the previous administration. In a message to reporters, Solicitor General Menardo Guevara said what was published was the response of ICC Prosecutor Karim Khan on the position submitted by the Marcos administration on the issue. Earlier, the government submitted its comment at the pretrial chamber to dismiss the move of the ICC prosecutor to resume its drug war probe. But in response, Khan questioned the genuineness of the Philippine government's investigation of the war on drugs. He said that none of the Philippine government's arguments have merit. Hence, he maintained that a probe on the war on drugs is needed. However, Guevara said the OSG is studying if they would respond to the prosecutor's response and vow to exert all legal remedy whatever ruling the pretrial chamber would make. Guevara stressed that the government is pursuing the investigation and prosecution of crimes committed during the war on drugs campaign within the framework of the country's legal and judicial system. For Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla, the government did not respond to ICC prosecutors since the country withdrew already from the ICC.
Will they take over our country? Are they going to send peacekeeping forces here and take over our military and our police and start running a show for us? Are they going to take over our justice system? I don't think anybody here would allow that.
Reynolds also lamented Can's criticism of the country's law and system of justice. The Justice Secretary believes that Can is a liability to ICC with his assistance to probe the drug war.
And if the person wants to be in a political, to appear in a political spectrum, maybe he should run for office here, if he can acquire Philippine citizenship and run for office. Because as far as I'm concerned, he's not a Filipino. He's not occupying a position that can make us do things against the law. We follow the law in this jurisdiction, and it's Philippine law that we follow.
Reynolds also stressed the government is doing its duty to prosecute and charge people who violate the law, but there is no witness to convict them.
We're continuing our inquiries. We're continuing our investigations. We're not stopping. And well, we are hoping that there will be more witnesses to come forward. That's what we need here. Do you think we should convict anybody based on a case that has no witnesses and no evidence?
Moira Encina reporting from Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, Super Typhoon Karding death toll rose to 10, 1.5 billion pesos worth of damages. U.S. President Joe Biden warns Hurricane Ian could be life-threatening and devastating. And fire in Northeast China restaurant leaves 17 dead. We have more stories from around the globe. Please stay tuned.
na balita. Haharapin.
Very important sa COMELEC, dapat kami po ay transparent.
Punto por punto. Sasagutin.
Hindi po kami pwedeng lalamya-lamya sa paghahanda. Ay paano po kung asa-asa kami marireserve? Kung paano po magkatuluyan? Kulang kami sa ballot boxes, kulang kami sa ballpen, kulang kami sa indelible ink.
Tututukan ni Atty. Sal Panelo.
In a scale of 1 to 10, what is the probability of cheating in this kind of election?
Kasama si COMELEC Chairman George Garcia sa Counterpoint tuwing Miyerkules, 10:30 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25.
Pwede po bang mag-ano ko dyan?
This
Welcome back to Matanang Agila International. The death toll from the onslaught of Typhoon Karding or Super Typhoon Karding has risen to 10, while 8 other individuals are still missing. The 2 additional casualties are from Baliwag, Bulacan and Tanay, Rizal. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, said they are hopeful to find the 5 missing fishermen from Camarines Norte, 2 in Antipolo, Rizal, and 1 in Patnanungan, Quezon. The NDRRMC data shows the typhoon had left 1.3 billion pesos damage in agriculture and 23 million peso damage to infrastructure in the affected regions. About 3,708 houses were destroyed by the calamity, where 1,092 of the houses are damaged. NDRRMC said a total of 42,600 individuals or 9,352 families remain sheltering at evacuation centers. The disaster agency once again alerted areas in northern Luzon with the new Typhoon Luis that is set to enter the Philippine area of responsibility. The NDRRMC also reminded local chief executives to provide equipment and training to its disaster team and responders to also protect their safety and welfare.
Tropical Depression Luis is not likely to directly affect the weather and sea conditions in the country, but rains are still expected due to the southwest monsoon or habagat and the low-pressure area east of Mindanao, Pagasa stated. The weather agency said in its 11 a.m. bulletin that raising tropical cyclone wind signal over any land area in the country is also unlikely. Pagasa said Luis is seen to move north-northwestward in the next 24 hours before turning generally northeast-westward this Thursday evening. Pagasa said Luis may become stronger and be declared a tropical storm tonight or tomorrow morning. Luis has maximum sustained winds of 55 kilometers per hour, gustiness of up to kilometers per hour, and a central pressure of 1,004 HPA while moving northwestward at 25 kilometers per hour. It may exit the northern boundary of the Philippine area of responsibility this Thursday morning or early afternoon. In a separate weather advisory, Pagasa said the habagat will bring light to moderate with at times heavy rains over Palawan and Occidental Mindoro. The LPA, located at 445 kilometers east of Guian, eastern Samar, will bring light to moderate with at times heavy rains over eastern Visayas, Caraga, and Davao Oriental. Scattered to widespread flooding and rain-induced landslides are likely, especially in areas that are highly or very highly susceptible to these hazards, as identified in hazard maps, and areas with significant antecedent rainfall, Pagasa said. The LPA is less likely to develop into a tropical depression within 48 hours, it also said.
Typhoon Noru barreled into Vietnam's central coast early Wednesday, according to the national forecaster, bringing powerful winds and heavy rain as hundreds of thousands of people took refuge in shelters. In Da Nang, Vietnam's third largest city, high-rise buildings shook in the strong gusts that toppled trees and tore roofs from homes across the central region. Large-scale power outages were reported. More than 200,000 people in Vietnam had taken refuge in shelters overnight after forecasters predicted the storm would be one of the biggest to hit the Southeast Asian nation. Wind speeds were slower than initially feared, but forecasters said heavy rain would continue into the day and warned of landslides and serious flooding. The Defense Ministry has mobilized around 40,000 soldiers and 200,000 militia members equipped with armored vehicles and boats in preparation for rescue and relief operations, according to state media. Almost half of Vietnam's airports have been shut. Schools and offices across several central provinces, including in Da Nang, were closed, and residents rushed to secure their homes Tuesday. The central section of a highway linking Hanoi in the north with commercial hub Ho Chi Minh City in the south has also been closed. That came after Super Typhoon Noru slammed into the Philippines earlier this week, killing 10 people. Authorities said late Tuesday that they had evacuated nearly 260,000 people from their homes, including in the popular tourist city of Hanoi or Hoi An, where residents were brought to a primary school.
U.S. President Joe Biden warns that the powerful Category 4 Hurricane Ian could be a very severe hurricane, life-threatening and devastating in its impact. Forecasters also warned of life-threatening storm surges and devastating winds after Hurricane Ian reportedly killed 2 and left millions without power in Cuba. Speaking from the Rose Garden of the White House, Biden also tells Florida residents to evacuate when ordered.
I just spoke this morning with the areas that are likely to be hit, the mayors of Tampa, St. Pete, and Clearwater. All of them are in the storm's path, and they're focused on the safety of their communities, and they're doing everything they can to get people out of harm's way. I told each one of them my conversation separately. Whatever they need, I mean this sincerely, whatever they need, contact me directly, and they know how to do that. evacuate when ordered, and be prepared for the storm when it comes. And evacuations have already been called for, and apparently they're going along in a fairly orderly way in each of the three cities.
As of 5 p.m. local time, mandatory evacuation orders had been issued in a dozen coastal Florida counties, with voluntary evacuation recommended in several others, according to the state's emergency officials.
The U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, warns that the biggest concern as the country awaits for Hurricane Ian to make landfall is storm surge. As Hurricane Ian threatens Florida after unleashing powerful winds and rains over Cuba, FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell urges that if people are told to evacuate by their local officials, to please listen to them. She says the decision people choose to make may mean the difference between life and death.
I do have concerns about complacency. We're talking about impacts in a part of Florida that hasn't seen a major direct impact in nearly 100 years. There's also parts of Florida where there's a lot of new residents that have never experienced this type of threat. So my message to them is still take this very seriously, listen to your local officials, and those Floridians that have been through this before, help your neighbors that may have not had to go through this.
The U.S. National Hurricane Center says with the hurricane moving north, Florida's western coast from Fort Myers to Tampa Bay was at the greatest risk of life-threatening storm surges. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said 2.5 million people were under evacuation orders as officials scrambled to prepare for the storm's forecast landing on Wednesday. The governor on Monday urged residents to stock up on food, water, medicine, and fuel, and he called up 7,000 National Guard members to help with the effort.
Residents of Tampa in Florida buy plywood panels at a hardware store to board up their windows, and city workers distribute sandbags as Hurricane Ian barrels toward the state after unleashing powerful winds and rains over Cuba. City workers are doubling down on efforts to fill up sandbags to distribute to residents.
Well, right now, City of Tampa workers are working really hard to fill up sandbags. We got lines that are probably over a mile long out here in West Tampa. You know, we've been threatened by storms like this so many times in the past, and so people think it's not going to happen, but it could happen. And it doesn't need to be a 10 out of 10 to hit us. It can be a 5 out of 10, and we get affected because of the bay.
Residents weary of flooding do not mind the wait if that means getting their share of extra protection.
I don't know. The most I'm worried about is the water coming into the home. So that's my biggest concern, therefore getting the sandbags.
I've been in this line for almost approximately about roughly three hours or so. Just, here, very appreciative first and foremost that the county's here to give us some free sandbags. Trying to take, initiative and be proactive.
My hope is that I could get the maximum number of bags, and my fears are that they're not going to do any good.
NASA's Artemis 1 rocket, waiting to blast off on a delayed mission to the moon, will be rolled back into its storage hangar as Florida braces for Hurricane Ian. The move is to protect the rocket from strong winds and heavy rain forecast for the Kennedy Space Center. It will, however, cause further setbacks for the uncrewed moon mission scheduled to launch last month and has already been pushed back 3 times. In a blog, the space agency says the decision was based on the latest weather predictions associated with Hurricane Ian after additional data gathered overnight did not show improving expected conditions. Hurricane Ian, which was situated as a Category 3 hurricane southwest of Cuba on Tuesday, is expected to strengthen as it heads toward Florida through the Gulf of Mexico. NASA had waited until the last minute to decide whether to shelter Artemis 1 in the hope of being able to schedule a takeoff attempt just after the storm passed. There will now be no opportunity for blastoff within the current launch window, which runs until October 4, and NASA has not indicated when another launch might be attempted.
A fire at a restaurant in northeastern China on Wednesday killed 17 people and injured another 3. That's according to local authorities. The blaze broke out at 12:40 p.m. in an eatery in the city of Changchun, the local government said in a statement. Firefighters rushed to the scene and completed search and rescue work by 3 p.m., the statement also said. Authorities said the cause of the incident is under investigation and the injured victims were sent to the hospital for treatment. Deadly fires occur frequently in China, where lax enforcement of building codes and widespread unauthorized construction can make it hard for people to flee burning buildings.
Two people are missing and 3 others have been injured in Guatemala after 2 giant sinkholes suddenly opened up in a street south of the country's capital. The 3 injured people fell into the 15-meter sinkhole while inside their vehicle. They were rescued hours later by the emergency services. Road safety and security spokesperson Juan Aquino said cranes were used to remove the vehicle that fell into the sinkhole. Rescue teams and army members entered the sinkhole in search of the 2 missing people, who were a mother and daughter. Guatemala's National Disaster Relief Agency also investigated the sinkholes to determine if there are any risks to the residents. Sinkholes are a deadly common occurrence in Guatemala City and come without warning. In 2007, the country's largest sinkhole devoured homes and a truck and killed 3 people as the ground suddenly gave way. In 2010, a 3-story building dramatically disappeared into another sinkhole. Next on Mata ng Agila International. Kremlin proxies claim victory as Kyiv sham referendum results. Sweden's Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson suspects sabotage on Nord Stream pipeline leaks. And Kenyan William President Ruto unveils first cabinet. Find out more about these stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Na balita, haharapin.
Very important sa COMELEC, dapat kami po ay transparent.
Punto por punto, sasagutin.
Hindi po kami pwedeng lalamya-lamya sa paghahanda. Ay paano po kung asa-asa kami marireset? Kung paano po magkatuluyan? Kulang kami sa ballot boxes, kulang kami sa ballpen, kulang kami sa indelible ink.
Tututukan ni Atty. Sal Panelo.
In a scale of 1 to 10, what is the probability of cheating in this kind of election?
Kasama si COMELEC Chairman George Garcia sa Counterpoint tuwing Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi dito sa Net 25.
Pwede po bang mag-ano ko dyan?
Dear Bossing, Poleng and Tali, ako po si Gardo Bantayan.
Gardo! Gardo! Oo! Ako naman!
Ano ba ka? Kapasukin niyo ako! Naiihi na ako ka!
Saan ka ba galing? Di bang sabi ko sa'yo, abangan mo si Mrs. Flores? Ba't pa kayo nagagalit sa akin? Wala namang ginagawa.
Ayun na nga, kaya nga akong galit dahil wala kang ginagawa.
Huwag Kuya Karching. Abangan!
Panalo tayo pag together. Walang talo pag together. Let's stand together. Sa Net 25.
This Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Kremlin-installed authorities in 4 Ukrainian regions under Russian control claimed victory in annexation votes, drawing global outrage as Moscow warned it could use nuclear weapons to defend the territories.
3000 дней мы боролись за право быть частью России.
вернуться к себе домой, быть со своей настоящей родиной. И у нас все получилось. Это наша...
Leonid Pasechnik, a head of the self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic, said the number who voted for the entry of the LPR into the Russian Federation is simply overwhelming and was expected. Pro-Russian authorities in Zaporizhzhia said 93.11% of voters backed joining Russia. Kherson officials said more than 87.05% of electors supported the move after all the ballots were counted. Russian President Vladimir Putin hailed the annexation, saying saving people in the territories where the referendum is taking place is the focus of the attention of Russia's entire society and of the entire country. Meanwhile, Ukraine and its allies have denounced the so-called referendums as a sham, saying the West would never recognize the results of the ballots, which have dramatically ratcheted up the stakes of Russia's 7-month invasion.
У всього світу Росія проводить відвертий фарс під назвою «референдум» на окупованій території України. Під дулами автоматів людей змушують заповнювати якісь там папірці для телекартинки. Цифри нібито результатів псевдореферендуму були намальовані заздалегідь.
President Volodymyr Zelensky also told the United Nations Security Council that Kyiv will not negotiate with Russia after Moscow held annexation referendums in 4 occupied Ukrainian regions. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield echoed Zelensky's comments, saying that the United States will never recognize any territory Russia attempts to seize or allegedly annex as anything other than part of Ukraine.
Sweden's Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson says that the leaks from the Nord Stream pipeline near a Danish island in the Baltic Sea are probably a deliberate act. The leaks at the pipelines, which are not operational but remain full of gas, are expected to last at least a week until the methane escaping from the underwater pipes runs out. Anderson says it is probably a question of sabotage. She says 2 detonations have created 3 leaks. 2 of the leaks are inside Denmark's economic zone, and one of them is inside Sweden's economic zone. Nord Stream 1, in service since 2011, has never reported any similar incidents, while Nord Stream 2 is brand new. With Poland and Denmark's authorities decrying the incident as an act of sabotage, some experts say Moscow could itself have had a hand in the incident. A researcher at the Royal Norwegian Naval Academy says Russia could have used sabotage as a pretext to stop gas deliveries. However, Russia defends itself by arguing it was extremely concerned about the leaks.
Germany says it will keep 2 nuclear plants running beyond 2022 if problems that have put French reactors out of service remain unresolved. Amid an energy crisis sparked by a cut in Russian supplies, Berlin had already announced this month it would keep the plants on standby beyond the end of 2022, rather than shutting them down as originally planned. But Economy Minister Robert Habeck says the situation in neighboring France, a key supplier, was not good and had become considerably worse in recent weeks. He says France's nuclear plants would be able to produce considerably less energy than originally expected. Habeck says if the forecasts do not turn around, the 2 plants will likely remain online in the first quarter of 2023. France, which has long relied on nuclear power, has itself been struggling after a number of its reactors were shut down due to corrosion issues. The decision by Berlin not to turn off the installations has affected 2 of Germany's 3 remaining plants. It was a U-turn that delayed a nuclear exit planned under former Chancellor Angela Merkel.
In a frontline town divided by regime and rebel forces in northwest Syria, students have returned to classrooms in bombed-out buildings. It has no glass in the windows, no doors, desks, chairs, not even electricity. Girls play alongside boys in the courtyard of their school in Tadif, some 32 kilometers east of Aleppo City. Heavily damaged during Syria's more than a decade-long war, Tadif lies on what has turned into a quiet front line between regime forces and Ankara-backed rebels. Most of the 8 schools in the area have been completely destroyed, but one reopened this week, welcoming around 300 out of 3,000 students from the rebel-held sector of Tadif. Tadif's makeshift school is one of many desperate attempts to provide education in Syria's embattled northwest. According to the United Nations, 44% of school-aged children there do not have access to education. The UN says children make up more than half of the region's population of more than 4 million. UN Deputy Regional Humanitarian Coordinator for Syria, Mark Kutz, says hundreds of schools have been damaged or destroyed by bombing, and far too many children remain out of school.
Kenyan President William Ruto names his first cabinet after winning a divisive election in August and defending his narrow victory in the country's highest court. Ruto, who defeated his opponent Raila Odinga by some 200,000 votes, unveils his new administration after calling the 26 ministers and cabinet-level appointees to a meeting at State House. Among those appointed are political allies whose support helped ensure Ruto, who served as deputy president in the former government, took the top job after an acrimonious campaign.
This exercise is important because although we have a cabinet, which I met with my good deputy this morning, it is also important that we set up the new cabinet early so that we can quickly take charge of the affairs of our country.
In Ukraine's port city of Odessa, residents have recently found themselves in hiding, not from the thunder of rocket attacks, but from the whir of buzzing Iranian drones in the sky. Since Russia launched its special military operation 7 months ago, machines have been playing an important role in forming part of reconnaissance operations, missile firings, or bomb drops. Odessa, the capital of southwest and Ukraine's main port, now ensures its safety from Moscow after its troops failed to take it at the beginning of the war. With lesser bombings and the removal of sandbags and checkpoints that disrupted the old town, residents have been slightly put at ease. But an increased appearance of drones in the sky made city residents fear a return to darker days.
Це досить суттєва небезпека, оскільки їх важко виявити з засобом протиповітряної оборони. Вони летять дуже низько для радарів, але вони летять дуже гучно. Їх мотор нагадує звук бензопіли або моторолера, і їх можна почути навіть пересічному громадянину для того, щоб вжити заходів, щоб перейти в укриття, почувши таке наближення такого звуку.
Coming right up, Prince William makes first visit to Wales since inheriting new title. Swiss glaciers melting away at record rate. And Hugh Jackman finally joins Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool 3. More stories from around the world when Agila International returns.
Naging background dancer ni Vilma
Yung mga gumaganon.
Anong secret?
Number one secret is Scarlett. I want to be with her. So I kept praying, Lord, please give me time.
Tissue, please. Pwede kong huyain ngayon yan?
Yeah.
Ang dami na ngayong mga artista ang nakakapasok sa lehislatura.
That's part of democracy, hindi ba?
Raymond, I love the dog. So you're in love.
Yes.
What do you call this dish?
It's an Indian dish.
Gisa-gisa pag may time. Lahat ng yan at maraming iba pa, watch out for it here on Corina Interviews.
Ang morning show na always nagbibigay ng ngiti at saya sa bawat kada all over the world. Tara na't ma-inspire at ma-amaze sa kwento ng mga bawat kada na nagwagi sa anumang hamon at pagsubok ng buhay. Itago na mga remote control at tumambay lang dito sa paborito niyong barkada sa umaga, ang Kada Umaga! Dahil kayo ang bida dito.
Haharapin.
Very important sa COMELEC, dapat kami po ay transparent.
Punto por punto. Sasagutin.
Hindi po kami pwedeng lalamya-lamya sa paghahanda. Ay paano po kung asa-asa kami marireset? Kung paano po magkatuluyan? Kulang kami sa ballot boxes, kulang kami sa ballpen, kulang kami sa indelible ink.
Tututukan ni Atty. Sal Panelo.
In a scale of 1 to 10, what is the probability of cheating in this kind of election?
Kasama si COMELEC Chairman George Garcia sa Counterpoint tuwing Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi dito sa Net 25.
Pwede po bang mag-ano ko dyan?
William and Kate, the new Prince and Princess of Wales, visit Holyhead Lifeboat Station on their first visit to Wales since taking up their new titles. Here's Ashley Espiritu from UK for the details.
Britain's heir to the throne, William and his wife Catherine, made their first visit to Wales since becoming the new Prince and Princess of Wales. Large crowds gathered around Holyhead Marina on the island of Anglesey off the northwest coast of Wales to greet the royal couple. William inherited the title on the death of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, when his father, the previous Prince of Wales, became king. The Domestic Press Association news agency reported that rather than planning an investiture, William was focused on deepening the trust and respect of the people of Wales over time. His wife Catherine, meanwhile, while conscious of the history associated with the role, wished to create her own path. A royal source was quoted as saying in the days after the Queen's death on September 8. At the same time, William spoke by telephone with Mark Drakeford, First Minister of Wales, and an avid Republican, a conversation in which the Prince mentioned his deep affection for Wales. The Prince, who previously served as an RAF search and rescue helicopter pilot while living on Anglesey with Catherine, expressed his and the Princess of Wales's honour in being asked by the King to serve the Welsh people. King Charles and his wife Camilla, the Queen Consort, visited Wales in the days after his mother's death as part of a tour of the UK home nations. In a speech to the Welsh Parliament, King Charles said William's love for this corner of the earth had been made all greater by the years he had spent there. This is Ashley Espiritu reporting from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Traffic is back in New York City, especially in recent times when the world is coming back to its pre-pandemic situation. And the recent in-person gathering of the world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly is an example of normalization of the situation. Let's hear more from our New York correspondent, El Aguilar.
One of the biggest gatherings of the world leaders is held annually in New York City, the United Nations General Assembly. September 2022 is the first face-to-face General Assembly since the pandemic. More than 150 heads of the state and their delegation are in town. Heightened security, barricaded roads, police officers are visible everywhere. Road closures and detours near the UN headquarters are in effect. Reminders are announced through newspapers, radio, television, and social media for New Yorkers to plan ahead and avoid the United Nations area. This is not new to New Yorkers. They know their way around the city. They take the subway or bus and sometimes take a cab. And these days, people also use Uber and Lyft.
UN week is the worst week in New York City. It sucks for everyone. Well, it just started, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. I'm trying to prepare myself. I was thinking to take a week off, but...
Around this time of the year for the United Nations General Assembly, it is, however, a regular working week. Traffic is bad, unacceptable at times. A 15, 20, or 30-minute trip takes an hour or more due to road closures and detours. Drivers are affected.
I'm going 2 miles. It's going to take half an hour.
You're losing money.
Yeah. Just stuck in traffic.
Yes, there is. You can make more money. A mile long drive takes more than an hour sometimes.
Compared to the black trips I do, I could do the same money every day, but over there it's less efforts. Like you take the guy from the morning from the hotel, drop him in the UN, takes like 25 minutes ride, and then wait from like 8:30 in the morning after you drop him till 2 until he finish. You pick him up, even take him back to the hotel, or if you want to go buy some stuff or go somewhere, you stay with him until like 6 p.m. and then we got released. Every day like this until the last day, we take them to the airport.
On the other hand, the food business is booming. Almost every restaurant in the area is packed with people. Restaurant owners are too busy to even give Net 25 an interview. From New York City, El Aguilar for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Switzerland's glaciers lost 6% of their total volume this year due to a dry winter and repeated summer heat waves, shattering previous ice melt records, a report revealed Wednesday. The study by the Cryospheric Commission of the Swiss Academy of Sciences laid bare the drastic scale of glacial retreat, which is only set to get worse.
This is due to the combination of different factors, because already the winter of this year was very poor in snow. So the glaciers didn't have a good protective layer at the beginning of the summer in April and May. And this made the snow disappear very much earlier, and therefore the ice melting started earlier than in 2003. And this was why, even though the temperatures were a little bit lower in summer this year, the melting was much higher.
The report said 3 cubic kilometers of ice to 3 trillion liters of water have melted away. Meanwhile, Huss added that slowing down of the melting of the glaciers and the warming of the climate is possible in the long term by reducing carbon dioxide emissions and protecting the climate. And in the best case, it may result in saving about 1/3 of the total volumes in Switzerland.
The little aircraft appeared out of the blue sky above a Texas home, deposited its payload of a mid-morning snack in the yard, and zoomed off as deliveries by drone started becoming a reality in America. Flying shipments of pizzas and birthday gifts have still not become the norm that tech leaders predicted. But the service is available in parts of the United States and government regulation is catching up. Skeptics question whether drone drop-offs can ever work on a large scale. But backers argue they are safer and better for the planet than hulking greenhouse gas spewing delivery trucks, and faster. The parcel, lowered to the ground from an electronic drone hovering above Tiffany Bukhari's Frisco, Texas house, was in her hands minutes after she placed an order on a smartphone app. Service was new in the area and remained small scale. But Wing offered the comparison of the up to 1,000 deliveries per day it's doing in just one part of the Brisbane metro area in Australia. A handful of firms already have operations running or will by year's end in parts of Texas, North Carolina, or California, with providers including Israeli startup Flytrex, Wing, and e-commerce behemoth Amazon. When an Amazon delivery drone crashed during a test last year and started a brush fire, it was another setback for the company's stumbling drone ambitions. The work has advanced more steadily for others, and in April, Wing announced what it calls the first commercial drone delivery service in a major U.S. metro area, Texas's Dallas-Fort Worth. Wing, which also offers deliveries to some areas in Australia and Finland, has a weight limit of 2.5 to 3 pounds.
The Philippine powerlifting team has brought home a total of 78 medals while establishing new lifting records in the inaugural Southeast Asian Cup held recently in Malaysia. The Philippine men's and women's teams together bagged 44 golds, 17 silvers, and 17 bronze medals in competition against the top powerlifters from participating countries in this year's powerlifting tournament held in Johor Bahru. The men's team snatched 49 medals in the men's open, junior, and master 1 categories, while also setting 3 Asian junior records in the meet. The Filipino lifters also set 7 new Asian records in the women's open and junior categories. This year's Southeast Asian Cup ran from September 15 to 18, 2022.
Ryan Reynolds revealed on Wednesday that Hugh Jackman is set to reprise his role as Wolverine in the 3rd installment of Deadpool, which will hit theaters in September 2024. Reynolds took to social media to share the exciting news to fans, along with a video of the star talking about missing the Disney D23 Expo. Sean Levy, known for teaming up with Reynolds in Free Guy and The Adam Project, will be directing Deadpool 3, while Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick of the first 2 Deadpool movies will return as the screenwriters. The last time Jackman appeared as Wolverine was in 2016's Logan, where he died. Therefore, X-Men fans are looking forward to how he will appear in Deadpool 3.
Let's take a look back on some historical events that happened on this day, September 28. In 1901, hundreds of native fighters, mostly armed with bolos, staged a successful surprise attack on U.S. troops in Balangiga town at the southern coast of Samar Island. The result was the worst single defeat of the U.S. Army in the Philippines, an event known in U.S. official reports and publications as the Balangiga Incident. In 1910, Diosdado Pangan Macapagal, 9th President of the Philippines serving from 1961 to 1965, was born in Lubao, Pampanga. And in 1989, President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., 10th President of the Philippines and the longest president to stay in office, died at the age of 72 in Honolulu, Hawaii.
And to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Will Rogers, an American performer. Don't let yesterday take up too much of today. And that usually comes with regret.
Yeah, that's true.
Do not. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Please stay tuned for Attorney Sal Panelo's Counterpoint with COMELEC Chairman George Garcia. Up next. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.